In March of 2020, as the world shut down in fear, one religious group in South Korea suddenly became the center of a global scandal. News stations accused them of spreading COVID across the country. Governments launched investigations, protesters gathered outside their churches, and online, a new label started spreading faster than the virus itself: cult. But the deeper investigators looked into the group, the stranger the story became. Members allegedly used fake identities to recruit people in secret. Families claimed their loved ones disappeared psychologically after joining. Former followers described being trained to lie about who they were. And at the center of it all was a man who claimed he alone could correctly interpret the Bible, a self-proclaimed chosen pastor who said humanity was living in the final chapter of Revelation. This is the story of Shincheonji Church of Jesus, and how one of the fastest-growing religious movements in the world became accused of helping spread a pandemic. Long before the COVID controversy, Shincheonji was already controversial inside South Korea. The group was founded in 1984 by a man named Lee Man-hee. To followers, he wasn't just a pastor. He was believed to be the promised pastor mentioned in the book of Revelation, the only person capable of understanding the Bible's hidden meanings in the end times. That belief became the foundation of Shincheonji. The name itself translates roughly to New Heaven and New Earth, a reference pulled directly from Revelation chapter 21. But unlike mainstream Christianity, Shincheonji taught that most churches were spiritually corrupted. Traditional pastors were seen as blind leaders teaching incomplete truth. Salvation, according to the group, could only come through Shincheonji's interpretation of Scripture. And according to former members, recruitment rarely began with someone openly saying that. Instead, it often started small. A Bible study invitation, a language exchange group, a peace organization, a volunteer club, an online friend. Former recruits say they were often approached casually by someone who slowly built trust over weeks or months before introducing deeper teachings. Some say recruiters intentionally hid their connection to Shincheonji until the target was emotionally invested. Inside South Korea, this practice became infamous enough to earn its own nickname. Phishing. Former members described being trained to identify emotionally vulnerable people, students far from home, people going through breakups, individuals struggling with depression or isolation. Once someone showed interest, they could be invited into increasingly intense Bible courses that lasted months. The secrecy became one of the group's defining features. Critics claimed members were taught to conceal their affiliation. Shincheonji denied malicious intent, arguing that secrecy was necessary because of discrimination and harassment from hostile churches and families. But by the late 2000s and 10s, the organization had exploded in size. Tens of thousands of followers, massive graduation ceremonies, global branches across Asia, Europe, Africa, and the United States. To outsiders, Shincheonji seemed to appear almost overnight. And then came COVID-19. In February 2020, South Korea was managing the early stages of the pandemic relatively well. Case numbers were still low. Officials believed outbreaks could remain contained. Then one patient changed everything. She became known internationally as Patient 31, a woman in the city of Daegu who attended Shincheonji services while experiencing symptoms. According to reports, she visited crowded church gatherings before being diagnosed. Soon afterward, thousands of infections began tracing back to Shincheonji-linked clusters. The numbers exploded. Within days, South Korea became one of the largest outbreak zones outside China. Media outlets across the world started focusing on Shincheonji. Headlines accused the church of becoming a super spreader. Public anger intensified when authorities claimed the organization had delayed handing over full membership records for contact tracing. Critics argued the group's culture of secrecy had directly interfered with pandemic containment. And suddenly, Shincheonji went from obscure religious movement to international news story. Footage emerged of masked officials spraying churches with disinfectant. Protesters held signs demanding the organization be shut down. Politicians publicly condemned the group. Petitions calling for Shincheonji's dissolution gained hundreds of thousands of signatures. Then came one of the most surreal moments of the entire controversy. In a nationally televised press conference, Lee Man-hee appeared before cameras and bowed deeply on the floor in apology. At nearly 90 years old, wearing a dark suit and a surgical mask, he knelt before reporters as flashes exploded around him. "I sincerely apologize," he said, but for many South Koreans, the apology came too late. Authorities launched criminal investigations into whether Shincheonji leadership intentionally obstructed public health efforts. Prosecutors accused officials of underreporting member numbers and withholding locations. Shincheonji denied deliberate wrongdoing. Supporters argued the group became a scapegoat during a moment of national panic. They claimed anti-cult sentiment amplified public outrage and that many accusations were politically motivated. But outside the legal battles, another story was unfolding online. Former members began speaking publicly in massive numbers. YouTube channels appeared dedicated entirely to exposing Shincheonji recruitment tactics. Ex-members described psychological pressure, intense schedules, and a culture where questioning leadership became spiritually dangerous. Some described spending nearly every waking hour attending lessons, memorizing scripture, and recruiting new members. Others talked about relationships collapsing after joining. Parents claimed their children cut off communication. Spouses described partners becoming emotionally distant. Former followers said the organization framed outsiders, including family, as spiritually deceived. One recurring accusation appeared constantly. Members allegedly learned to maintain double lives. Students could attend secret Bible classes while pretending to participate in ordinary church groups elsewhere. Some former recruits claimed they didn't even realize they were studying Shincheonji doctrine until months into training. Again, Shincheonji rejected claims of brainwashing or coercion. The group insisted its members voluntarily studied scripture and that critics misunderstood their theology. But the secrecy only fueled suspicion, especially after journalists began investigating Shincheonji's internal structure. According to reports, the church organized members into tribes modeled after the 12 tribes of Israel. Followers completed exams on biblical interpretation. Massive graduation ceremonies celebrated thousands of recruits at once, often in highly choreographed events resembling corporate conventions mixed with religious revival meetings. The visuals were striking: rows of identical white shirts, perfectly synchronized crowds, military-like organization. To supporters, it represented unity and discipline. To critics, it looked unsettlingly controlled. And at the center of it all remained Lee Man-hee, a man followers believed fulfilled biblical prophecy itself. That belief became one of the movement's most controversial teachings. Former members said Shincheonji theology framed Lee as the only person capable of delivering true salvation in the end times. Critics argued this created extreme dependency on leadership authority. But perhaps the strangest part of the story is how effective the organization became despite constant controversy. Even after global backlash during COVID, Shincheonji continued growing internationally. Branches appeared in more countries. Recruitment adapted online. Bible courses moved to Zoom. Social media campaigns intensified. And in some regions, critics claimed recruitment became even harder to identify because it blended into ordinary online communities. The pandemic that nearly destroyed Shincheonji may have also accelerated its global reach. Today, estimates of membership vary widely. The organization claims hundreds of thousands of followers worldwide. Critics dispute those numbers. Governments in multiple countries continue monitoring the group, while anti-cult organizations warn about recruitment tactics targeting students and young adults. But Shincheonji also has loyal defenders. Members often describe finding purpose, discipline, and community inside the church. Some accuse mainstream media of distorting facts and ignoring discrimination faced by believers. Others argue the word cult has been weaponized against unconventional religions. That debate remains unresolved because Shincheonji exists in a space where fear, faith, secrecy, and modern media all collide. A secretive religious movement, a global pandemic, a prophecy-driven leader, and a controversy that transformed an obscure church into an international symbol overnight. But maybe the reason this story spread so far isn't just because of COVID. It's because Shincheonji represents something deeply unsettling about the modern world. How easily people can build hidden identities online. How quickly communities can form in isolation. And how, during moments of fear and uncertainty, belief itself can become both a source of comfort and suspicion. Because somewhere tonight, in a crowded city or a quiet college campus, someone may already be sitting in what they think is just another Bible study, not realizing they've already entered the first step of something much larger and much more secretive. If you enjoyed this deep dive and want more documentaries covering hidden organizations, cults, unexplained cases, and stories most channels never talk about, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It genuinely helps more than people realize. And if there's another group, mystery, or underreported story you think deserves a documentary, leave it down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.